મને તો ત્યાં ફોટા મોકલ્યા હતા તો એમનો જે ભાઈબંધ હતો ને
ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ नवमोऽध्यायः राजविद्या राजगुह्ययोगः। श्रीभगवानुवाच इदं तु ते गुह्यतमं प्रवक्ष्याम्यनसूयवे। ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितं यज्ञात् कृत्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात् राजविद्या राजगुह्यम् पवित्रमिदमुत्तमम् प्रत्यक्षावगमन् धर्म्यम् सुसुखम् कर्तुमव्ययम् अश्रद्दधानाः पुरुषाः धर्मस्यास्य परन्तप अप्राप्यमान् निवर्तन्ते मृत्युसंसारवर्त्मनि मया ततमिदं सर्वं जगदव्यक्तमूर्तिना मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थः ममात्मा भूतभावनः यथाकाशस्थितो नित्यम् वायुः सर्वत्र गोमहान् तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानीत्युपधारय सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृति यान्ति मामिकाम् कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम् प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नम् अवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात् न च मान्तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते अवजानन्ति मां मूढाः मानुषीं तनुमाश्रितम् परं भावमजानन्तः मम भूतमहेश्वरम् मोघाशामोघकर्माणः मोघज्ञानाविचेतसः राक्षसीमासुरीं चैव प्रकृतिं मोहिनीं श्रिताः महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः भजन्त्यनन्यमनसः ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम् सततं कीर्तयन्तो मां यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते ज्ञानयज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम् अहं क्रतुरहं यज्ञः स्वधाहमहमौषधम् मन्त्रोऽहमहमेवाज्यम् अहमग्निरहं हुतम् पिताहमस्य जगतः माता धाता पितामहः वेद्यं पवित्रमोङ्कारः ऋक्सामयजुरेव च गतिर्भर्ता प्रभुः साक्षी निवासः शरणं सुहृत् प्रभवः प्रलयस्थानं निधानं बीजमव्ययम् तपाम्यहमहं वर्षं निगृह्णाम्युत्सृजामि च अमृतं चैव मृत्युश्च सदसच्चाहमर्जुन त्रैविद्या मां सोमपाः पूतपापाः यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम् अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देव भोगान् एतं भुक्त्वा स्वर्गलोकं विशालम् क्षीणे पुण्ये मर्त्यलोकं विशन्ति एवं त्रये धर्ममनुप्रपन्नाः गतागतं कामकामालभन्ते अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो माम् ये जनाः पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम् येऽप्यन्यदेवता भक्ताः यजन्ते श्रद्धयान्विताः तेऽपि मामेव कौन्तेय यजन्त्यविधिपूर्वकम् अहं हि सर्वयज्ञानां भोक्ता च प्रभुरेव च न तु मामभिजानन्ति तत्त्वेनातश्च्यवन्ति ते यान्ति देवव्रता देवान् पितॄन् यान्ति पितृव्रताः भूतानि यान्ति भूतेज्याः यान्ति मद्याजिनोऽपि माम् पत्रं पुष्पं फलं तोयं यो मे भक्त्या प्रयच्छति तदहं भक्त्युपहृतम् अश्नामि प्रयतात्मनः यत्करोषि यदश्नासि यज्जुहोषि ददासि यत्तपस्यसि कौन्तेय तत्कुरुष्व मदर्पणम् शुभाशुभफलैरेवं मोक्ष्यसे कर्मबन्धनैः सन्न्यासयोगयुक्तात्मा विमुक्तो मामुपैष्यसि समोऽहं सर्वभूतेषु न मे द्वेष्योऽस्ति न प्रियः ये भजन्ति तु मां भक्त्या मयि तेषु चाप्यहम् अपि चेत् सुदुराचारः भजते मामनन्यभाक् साधुरेव समन्तव्यः सम्यग्व्यवसितो हि सः क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वच्छान्तिं निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्तः प्रणश्यति मां हि पार्थव्यपाश्रित्य येऽपि स्युः पापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यास्तथा शूद्राः तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम् किं पुनर्ब्राह्मणाः पुण्याः भक्ता राजर्षयस्तथा अनित्यमसुखं लोकम् इमं प्राप्य भजस्व माम् मन्मना भव मद्भक्तः मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु मामे वैष्यसि युक्त्वैवम् आत्मानं मत्परायणः ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे राजविद्या राजगुह्ययोगो नाम नवमोऽध्यायः।
Shall we start with the permission?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Good evening, one and all. Myself, Ganga Sushil Warrior, on the behalf of Center of Universal Human Values of K.S. Shroff College of Arts and Commerce, welcomes all the dignitaries and participants to the 9th day of Life Enhancing Certificate course of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. I request our respected and visionary principal, Dr. Lily Bhushan, to offer virtual bouquet to Dr. Jayanti Ravi ma'am.
Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request our respected principal, Dr. Lily Bhushan, to introduce the esteemed guest.
Vanakkam, Dr. Jayanti Ravi ji. On behalf of Kandivali Education Society, our management, and on behalf of the entire teaching and non-teaching staff, we really feel honored and blessed to have you amongst us. Madam Dr. Jayanti Ravi is a multifaceted personality, a woman of substance, I should say. To begin with, a scientist, a civil servant, performing vocalist, able administrator, and above all, a woman who carries a lot of grit and gumption. Talking about her academic pursuits, she has a master's degree in nuclear physics from University of Madras, MPA from Harvard University, and PhD on technical enhanced education from MS University of Baroda. Madam has authored many books and have drawn many case studies which are published by IIM Ahmedabad. She's written a lot of newspaper articles, published papers in international journals, and has guided doctoral students. She's also been a visiting fellow at Harvard University and many universities in India. Being an IAS officer, she has served as a DDO in Sabarkantha district, collector of Panchmahal. She has been director of NAC in Prime Minister's office. She has also held a post of Principal Secretary and Commissioner Rural Development, and also Commissioner of Higher and also of Technical Education in the state of Gujarat. Madam has steered the state of Gujarat to attain one of the first states who are declared open defecation-free state. During her tenure as Principal Secretary of Health for over 2 years, her handling of COVID situation in Gujarat was much lauded and applauded, and also documented by WHO. Because of her exemplary work and efforts, Gujarat has performed and has rose to the level of attaining rank of Gold 3 of SDG in India Index. Her problem-solving acumen in various sectors has provided results across the state of Gujarat. Ma'am, we are truly honored. Once again, I would like to put in words that, ma'am, 2 years back, our students and staff had attended your same course at MS University of Baroda, and they were totally in awe, and that is what it was my heartfelt desire that you should be amongst us, and I'm so happy that you are here today. I would like to tell the dignitaries present here and the august audience that Madam is not well today. She's having fever, but still we salute her spirit, for she said she would keep her commitment as she would like to bow herself on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Ma'am, we are overwhelmed by your presence, and all of us are waiting to listen to you. Thank you once again. And I would still like to reiterate that we would like to have you once in our campus to be a beacon of growth and development as an educational institution. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. We are ready and eager to listen to the glorious words of our esteemed guest. Jayanti ma'am, the session is all yours.
Namaste to all of you. Good evening. Sabko mera namaskar. I'm extremely happy that the Kandivali Education Society and such a reputed, leading, outstanding college is doing something which is so special, to take the inheritance of India to the young generation, the future of India, and make sure that this really is etched in their minds as they begin their journey and cross their youth to enter from the state of college to real life, where, of course, it will be a life of unending education, discovering, growing within, without, and really being major contributors to society, to the nation, and to the world at large. So once again, I want to express my deep gratitude and thanks to the organizers for having thought of something so important, so special, and inviting me for this. As was mentioned, I'm a little unwell, down with fever last few days, but I do hope with the grace of Sri Krishna, and I think that is the spirit of this chapter, chapter 9, that whenever there are challenges, this whole topic is challenging the challenges, isn't it? इसको अगर हम देखा जाए तो कह सकते हैं कि कोई भी अगर चुनौती है तो उसको कैसे ललकारा जाए, तो उस संदर्भ में उसी एक भावना से मैं भी कोशिश कर रही हूँ कि ये अभी हमारी चुनौती है आज, तबीयत थोड़ी नादुरुस्त है, लेकिन इस समस्या के सम्मुख भी कोशिश करूंगी कि जो भी मैंने सीखा है ये मैं आप सबके साथ शेयर करूं, बांटूं, and that we collectively at the end of this session are able to derive something of great benefit to both the sets of people, those that are listening to me and me too, who is trying to share this with all of you. I'll start with the Gayatri, which is composed by Sri Aurobindo. It's just 2 lines, which is talking of the importance of truth. Om Tatsaviturvaram Rupam Jyotihi Parasya Dhimahi Yannah Satyena Deepayet Satyena Deepayet Om Tat Savitur Varam Rupam Jyotihi Parasya Dhimahi Yanna Satyena Deepayet Satyena Deepayet. This beautiful treasure that has been handed down to us is a great lesson, a great manual, not just a theoretical manual, but a very practical, a very applicable manual to day-to-day living. Where was this given? Who gave this? I'm sure you all know of it. It didn't happen inside a classroom, inside an ashrama. This entire process of educating a person who was absolutely open at that time to receiving, who needed this advice, happened in the middle of a battlefield. It is believed that the charioteer, who was none other but divine Lord Parthasarathi Sri Krishna, he was actually on the chariot, and the person, the head of the army who was sitting behind him, was in a state of complete despair, dejection, not wanting to fight the battle. He was all eager because the battle was not something that was it was not a knee-jerk reaction. It was not something that was absolutely immediately run into. ये जो लड़ाई था, उसके पहले काफी प्रयास किए गए थे. उनके सामने वाली जो टीम थी, दुर्योधन, उनके साथ नेगोशिएशंस किए थे, उनके साथ बाटाघाट हुए थे, बहुत सारी मीटिंग्स हुई थी. कोशिश किया गया था कि उनको थोड़ी तो जमीन दी जाए जिससे कि दोनों लोग बिल्कुल संतुष्टि के साथ रह सके. But when Duryodhana absolutely put his foot down and said he would not even give land at measuring the head of the tip of a needle, the battle became inevitable. So the battlefield unfolds, and there Arjuna, who's all geared, eagerly looking forward to this battle, and he's a great warrior. But when he sees his own uncles, grandfathers, cousins, brothers, relatives across, teachers, he becomes weak in his knees. बिल्कुल घबरा जाता है, दुखी हो जाता है, बिल्कुल युद्ध लड़ने के मूड में नहीं है, बहुत उसमें डिप्रेशन आ जाती है. और उसके बाद धीरे धीरे श्री कृष्ण, जो एक बहुत ही अव्वल कक्षा के, उत्तम कक्षा के मैनेजमेंट गुरु उन्हें कह सकते हैं. In fact, what he taught in this beautiful song Celestial Bhagavad Gita is as relevant today as it was back then, whether it is boardrooms of big corporate companies, whether you talk of government meetings, cabinet committee rooms across different think tanks, whether it's global organizations. This is something extremely relevant at all levels. And in this context, it is very important that we understand the context of this whole war and the Gita as it was being rolled out there, and understand this particular chapter. This chapter is, as was recited and shown to us a little while ago, it is about Rajavidya and Rajaguhya. So basically, in the context of Vidya or education, if there is a hierarchy, then this particular chapter and what it teaches us is given the pride of place of being at the highermost level, at the topmost level of the hierarchy of learnings. It's called Rajavidya, Rajaguhya. So, and again, it's interesting that in this chapter, the entire chapter is something that is being delivered, spoken by none other than the Lord. In fact, there's not even a question that Arjuna asks. It's completely Sri Krishna who's giving us these words. And I think they're very, very important keys, master keys for each one of us to lead our lives, because our lives too are fraught with many challenges, small, big, some at the workplace, some at the home place, some related to ethics, some related to our health, some related to day-to-day challenges, some could be big practical or policy issues. So in the midst of all of these whirlwinds of challenges, this is very important. We go shloka by shloka. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Idam tute guhyatamam pravakshyam yanasuyave jnana vijnana sahitam yajñatva mokshase shubhat. What does he say here? Now this I'm going to give you, I'm going to say and teach you, hey, person, anasuyave, a person who's without envy, who's kind of clear. That's an adjective for Arjuna. And this is very, very secretive. Guhyatamam, jnana vijnana sahitam. So it's not just information or knowledge, but jnana and vijnana. What is the difference? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa brings out this difference and says that jnana could be, for example, if we are told that if you take two pieces of wood and strike them together, they create fire. This theoretical information can be called jnana. But when you say actually show it happen, not only make it happen, but use it to cook rice, you can call it vijnana. So which means that this is not just theory, but praxis as well, practical example as well. तो इसमें जो है भगवान सिर्फ एक थियोरेटिकल बात ही नहीं कह रहे हैं, पर उसको उसका किस तरह से उसको अनुसरा जाए, किस तरह से उसको जीवन में रखा जाए और अनुभूति कैसे की जाए, उसकी वो हमें दृष्टांत देते हैं और कहते हैं यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष से अशुभात. इसको जानते हुए अगर ये चीज जो बहुत ही गुह्य है मैं आपको बताने जा रहा हूं हे अर्जुन, जिसमें ईर्ष्या की भावना बिल्कुल नहीं है, और इसे जानते हुए आपको अशुभ से मोक्ष मिलेगा. That means you'll be liberated from all kinds of evil. Ashubh is all those feelings of greed, anger, hatred, jealousy, depression, all those things that come and plague the human mind. After all, human beings are frail and we are prone to all of this, vulnerable for all of this. So this is something that Krishna tells him. He then goes on to say, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Pavitram idam uttamam, Pratyakshaavagamam dharmyam, Susukham kartumavyayam. This is extremely relevant for us. कि हम हर एक के लिए मायने रखता है, चाहे हम किस व्यवसाय, किस धंधे में, किस करियर में, प्रोफेशन में क्यों ना हो. जैसे वो कहते हैं प्रत्यक्षावगमम, मतलब ये डायरेक्टली अटेनेबल है. प्रत्यक्ष यानी परोक्ष नहीं, खुद ब खुद आप इसे पहुंच सकते हैं, इस चीज को आप ग्रहण कर सकते हैं. और दूसरा इससे आगे जाके कहते हैं धर्म्यम कर्तुम अव्ययम सुसुखम. By just performing your duty, you may be a homemaker, you may be a businessman, you may be a teacher, you may be a student, you may be a wife, a son, a daughter, whatever be your duty, that's your dharma. By just carrying out your dharma, but by this, with this awareness, that awareness is very important. You can actually, you can get avyayam, which is unending happiness, susukham, by doing your duty. Now, if I was to give you an example, there's a very simple story that we know, that there was a place where a temple was getting built and there were 3 laborers there. All of them were trying to cut the stones there and sculpt them. So one of the laborers says, well, I'm breaking some stones. The second fellow, when he's asked what he's doing, says, I'm trying to earn a livelihood. And the third one says that I am contributing to creating a beautiful temple where tons of people, millions of people would come and attain liberation. They'll be able to get unending joy, and this will be a thing of great beauty. So in that context, Sri Krishna says that if we attain that attitude and follow the advice given in this chapter, each one of us, no matter what is the station in life, what is our duty currently, will be able to attain this susukham, not only happiness, but enduring happiness, and which is avyayam, which will not reduce, which doesn't go away. And in this context, I also want to now go on to the next one, because the key here is Shraddha, doing it with the right faith, like this third laborer they had. So he now comes up with a caveat. Ashraddhadhana purusha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapyamam nivartante mrityu sansara vartmani. He says, but however, if there are people who do not have faith in me, and on this dharma, they don't believe in what I've just said, then they do not attain me, and they actually come back to the cycle of births and death, this path, Vartmani path of this cycle of birth and death without attaining me. So while he says that this is a secret, attainable by everybody, by just following what is your dharma, there is a very important underlying condition. And what is that? To do it with full Shraddha, faith. Then he goes on to say how he pervades everything. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyakthamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavasthitaha. So now the Lord goes on to say how he pervades everything in this universe and how everything is also in him. And then, of course, he also goes on to say, but he is not contained in any of the beings, which means he's far beyond. And the beings also are not only anchored in him, to say that this is a huge continuum and he is there. Now, if we look again for a minute at the overall structure of this chapter, when we look at it in the context of challenging the challenges, the first part that we have just seen till here, it's framing where he tells us the secret, and he says he's going to tell us the secret and how it is integrated with duty attainable by all of us, and how faithlessness makes us ineligible. We cannot get it. And now he goes on to establish his presence, the theory. Later, he also goes on to say, by delineating where all he is, that he is in this, he is in that, he is in this. So he explains that he is in everything. He explains that in a very unambiguous way, and an overwhelming way, unequivocal way, praxis as well. And then he also gives us certain master keys, how to challenge the challenge and win over them, not just challenging the challenges, but emerge victorious. And then he explains the praxis in a simplified manner. He talks of how he is not only in every object, everything, but in relationships too, and how it is important that we have to act, but with that correct understanding. And then the synthesis, how worldly success is possible with the power of thought, but in this totem pole of action and thoughts, ultimately devotion to the supreme, how that is the higher most. Uske baad, he goes on also to tell us the key to actions, to simple, attainable. How is it that we can attain what we want? The key to attainable action in this context of how do we get the guhyatamam, how do we attain mastery over all these challenges. And finally, he also frames this by saying this is like the Sarva Siksha Abhiyan, because he says it is accessible to all. In fact, there's no creed, caste, sex, gender, there's no such barrier. Anybody can attain it. So this is the overall. And finally, he also says, again reiterates the master key and says, the one key for the entire thing is complete faith, devotion in me. Now, when we move further, Nacha mam tani karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya udasina vadasinam asaktam teshu karmasu maya dhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagadviparivartate. So he says the entire, all of this is being done under my overall adhyakshapana, under my overall leadership. And the entire, all the sacharacharam, whether the things that are moving, immovable things, they're all guided by my overall leadership. And then he also further says, avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam. Those deluded people, they actually, those people who are slightly deluded, immature, they tend to deride me, but they do not know that I'm actually the one behind all of this. And they are deluded by their ashas, moghasha, mogha karmanu, mogha jnana, vichetasaha, rakshasim asurim chaiva prakriti mohinim shrita. So the immature do not see me beyond my physical form, the Lord says, and they do not know the true nature of my complete self as the Lord of all creation. And he says that deluded by all these moghashas, their desires, their actions, their knowledge, they finally attain a very disastrous nature of the asura or the evil qualities, which means they lose that inherent divine goodness, which is the basic inherent essence in all of us, but that gets more and more clouded by their actions. he then draws a contrast and says, great people, they seek my divine nature. They know me as the cause, unending cause of all creation, and they approach me with single-pointed mind. Bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadimabhyayam. So this is, again, he says he distinguishes between those that are deluded people and those that are great people who are mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritimashrita. Then he goes on to describe and says, this is extremely important. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dradhavrata namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. So yatantascha is striving, putting in efforts. आप जिस भी क्षेत्र में काम करते हो, आप जो भी यत्न करते हैं, प्रयत्न करते हैं, उसमें सततम हमेशा कीर्तयन्तो माम, अगर आप भगवान के गुण गाएं और जो भी आपका कर्म है, जो भी करें, उसको एक अर्पण करने के भाव के साथ अगर आप करें भगवान को, ईश्वर को, और नमस्यन्तश्च माम भक्त्या नित्य युक्ता उपासते, नमस्यन्तः prostrating, doing नमस्कार, हमेशा दंडवत प्रणाम करने के एक भावना के साथ आप जो भी मुझे अर्पण करते हैं, वो सभी आपका जो कर्म है बिल्कुल सुंदर होगा, और जो आप बिल्कुल निश्चिंत तौर पर, जो हम कहते हैं कि किसी भी चैलेंज यानी कि कोई भी चुनौती है तो उसको आप बिल्कुल जीत सकते हैं, ललकारना ही नहीं पर ललकार के उस पर आप विजयी भी प्राप्त हो सकते हैं। ज्ञान यज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम. He goes on to say that, well, even by knowledge too, they will eventually come to me, whether they believe in one God, many forms, different forms, even then, all these different ways of approaching me nevertheless lead them to me. Aham kraturaham yajna swadhaham aham aushadam mantroham ahamevachyam aham agnir aham hutam. Now we come to the second part of it, as I explained, where he's giving not only the theory, but he's enumerating, listing out, and saying that if there was a sacrifice, if you look at a yagna, which is done, where there is aham kratur yagna, yagnaha swadhaham aham aushadham. We put all those medicines, the herbal aushadha, into the yagna, isn't it? So in a similar way, that is a simile, a metaphor for all the work we do. Suppose it is a homemaker making a beautiful breakfast in the morning. The process of lighting the fire, cutting, chopping the vegetables, putting together everything, making a beautiful breakfast, laying it on the table, presented beautifully with great affection, love for the members of the family to partake of it. Now, every portion of this, the Lord says that I am not only the process of making it, but I'm the ingredients that go into it. I'm the fire that makes it come on, and so on. So if you look at the manner in which he describes this, it is excellent that every act of the Lord here he describes is done. He says, I am responsible for everything. Now there is, after this, in fact, when we talk of this, today is Sarvodaya Day, and I'm going to share a small experience that I've had while, and I'm just going to have to put the battery on. You'll have to bear with me for a few minutes. I'm going to get this organized. And we're back. So today happens to be Sarvodaya Day. And in the context of this, Aham Kratur Aham Yajna, to say that he's everything. And so in every breath, if there's a way of actually remembering, acknowledging, and offering everything we do to the divine, I think it would really make a world of difference. In fact, many years back, when I had gone to Kirti Mandir at Porbandar, the place where Mahatma Gandhi was actually born, I remember seeing something beautiful written on the wall there. It says, Shwas, this is a doha of Kabir, Shwas, Shwas mein naam lo, vritha Shwas na hoy, na jane is Shwas ka avan hoy na hoy. And if you know, Mahatma Gandhi's life was one that was completely devoted to Ram, so much so that even at the point where he was shot at, the words that came to his mouth were, Hey Ram. And so that is the spirit in which, if we are constantly devoted to and completely united with the Lord, aware with that full understanding that he is indeed in everything, that is what this chapter is about, to say that we surrender, we offer ourselves at his lotus feet, and how we realize that he is in everything. The next shloka, 7th shloka, talks of how he represents every relationship. So far, he spoke about everything in terms of how he is the yajna in every work that we do, how he is a part of it. Then he goes on to say how he's Pitahamasya Jagato Mata Dhata Pitamaha. I'm the mother and the father and the Pitamaha. Vedyam Pavitram Omkara Ritsami Yajurvedacha. Yajurevacha. So he says that I'm all of these, all of knowledge and all that is ought to be known. Vedyam, everything that ought to be known, I am that. Then he goes on to say something very beautiful. Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Sharanam Suhrite Prabhava Pralayasthanam Nidhanam Bijam Avyayam. Gatir Bharta, I'm the one who carries your movements. Everything that you do, sometimes in great speed, sometimes you do things slowly. So everything that you do, I'm the one who carries it. I'm the Lord. Sakshi, witness. I witness everything that is happening. Nivasa, I'm the ultimate abode of yours. Sharanam, I'm this ultimate abode as well. I give refuge to you. Suhrite, so I'm not just all these things, but I'm also your dearest friend. Prabhava Pralaya Sthanam Nidhanam Bijamabhyam. I'm the beginning and end of creation, and the receptacle for the eternal seed, because everything, ultimately the whole of universe, everything, he's the essence, the original seed, which is behind everything. Then he goes on to describe other attributes of his, such as Tapamyaham aham varsham nigrhanam yutsrujam cha amritam chaiva mrityuscha sadasat chaham arjuna. So again, he is the fire, he's the rain. So all amrita, immortality, death, sad, truth, asat, everything I am. So he basically again goes on to say that I'm there in everything. And then Traividya mam somapa putapapa yajnairištva swargatim prarthayante te punyamasadya surendra lokam ashnanti divyan divideva bhogan. So again he says, however, if some of us perform our duties, etc., and also some of the rituals more in a perfunctory manner, that, well, I want to do it with the strategy that if I perform all these duties, I'll get these benefits. If we do it that way, he says, well, they will get the benefit and they may get what is called Surendra Lokam. But as the bank balance of all these good shall I say, earnings that you've made, the punyas that you've gained, as they slowly get depleted, you will again come back into this world of life and death. So a perfunctory performance of all of these duties without that complete connection with the Lord, he says, is not really of effect. Te tam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punye martya lokam vishanti evam trayi dharma manu prapanna gata gatam kama kama labhante. So what it's trying to say is that by really following the scriptures to the T and saying that, well, this is the ritual, this is the way I want to do it, and so on and so forth, you may get a benefit in terms of certain benefits that you feel you're getting some success of a certain kind, but it's really not going to be an enduring success. It's not going to be something which is sustainable. And for doing that, it is important that you are connected with the Lord and you have the right attitude of complete faith and surrender. And that becomes the defining feature of this whole thing. Now comes the most important and possibly the most popular shloka of this chapter and possibly also of the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes if people were asked, tell me one shloka of Bhagavad Gita that you really like, it's likely this shloka would also compete with it. There is, of course, another one from chapter 2, Karmanyevadhikaraste, that is also considered almost the symbol or the mascot of Bhagavad Gita. But this is Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Ye Jana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamyaham. This is very important. So again, he gives this importance of saying, explains the importance of complete surrender and being connected to the divine. Ananyas Chintayantoma, without having any other worries, not even worrying about your own welfare. Those who really worship me by doing their duty, by doing whatever is their dharma, but with single-minded faith in me, without worrying about it, but about anything. Tesham Nitya Bhiyuktanam. With them, I would always be united. And Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham. Yoga is for future growth. Kshema is to protect the things that you have already got. So he gives you a double guarantee. He says that if you perform whatever you do with complete single-mindedness of focus on me, on the divine, and offer everything to the divine, he says, not only will I take care of your complete future growth, progress, achievements, but I'll also ensure that whatever you have achieved till now is also really protected and maintained well. Then he goes on to say that, well, if you also, those devotees who follow other lords also eventually come to me. And the next shloka after that is also about I'm aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mama bijananti tatvanatascha vantite. So he says how, again, I'm in all the enjoyer and the God in all the yajnas, in all the ritual, all the offerings. Now here, yajna doesn't only mean a ritual, but anything that we do. It could be our duty as a teacher, any work that we do, all of this, he says, I'm the basic person there. So remembering me as a substratum in everything. So there's no room then for the ego to say that I did this, because who is the I here in all of this? There's just one I, and that is the divine I of the divine, capital I, which is the Lord himself. So he is the one who's there in everything. So for us to believe that I'm doing this work, I'm offering this class, I'm cooking this food, I'm making this object, I'm running this industry, I'm running this office. So he says that, well, all of that is actually me. He pervades everything. He then goes on to also say how the thoughts that we harbor are very important, and how we become the thoughts that we harbor. Yanti devavrita devan pitran yanti pitravritaha bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajinopi mat. We become what we meditate on. So he says, well, if you need anything, you can meditate on it. But slowly, as we do, we may ask for all these toys. There's a beautiful story of Sri Ramakrishna. He says that there's a baby surrounded by various toys. The baby is very busy playing with all of them, completely thrilled with it, delighted with all of it. But finally, a point comes when he suddenly wants his mother. And when he wants that, no other toy can satisfy him. He cries out for his mother and reaches out to the mother, and only she can satisfy him. Similarly, while all these thoughts where we crave for success, fame, money, good relationships, family, and all these benefits on the worldly front, they're important. While we do look at all of this, but eventually a time comes where we want to hold on to our mother, the divine mother, with one hand and continue to do all that we have to do on the worldly plane with the other hand. And that, I guess, is the key to actually being able to lead a successful life. And here again, he says, again, if we look at what he says, this guarantee, if we go back of Ananya's Chintayantoma, there is another similar shloka which is very popular. It is Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yo Me Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhaktyupahritam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. So here again he says, don't worry. Anything that you offer to me, as long as it is offered with that sense of full devotion, I accept it with great joy, great delight. And there's a story here that we've often heard of, but it's a very dear story to me, and I thought I would share this. How are we doing on time? I think we still have some time for this session. So there is this little flowered cellar, and there's a beautiful statue of Buddha which is being built. And there is a head priest of the temple who is going around collecting donations and collecting money and different things from people to build this beautiful statue. Well, there are people very rich who are offering, some of them offer their diamond bangles, some of them offer millions of rupees or gold coins and so on. But this little flower seller by the temple, she gets to know that there's this whole procession for offering. And the only thing that she has is one coin, which she has earned that day. And out of great devotion, she wants to offer that for the statue of the Buddha. And she does that. Now the priest, the head priest who sees this, finds it a little amiss. In his state of mind, he probably doesn't value or understand the devotion with which she's offering it. And in his deluded stage, the immaturity that he has, he throws it away at her and says, is this of any value? He goes back, and finally the statue of the Buddha is cast. It is believed that each time the statue is cast, it would crack and never really set. This happens at least 3 times. And then one day when the head priest is sleeping, he has a dream where the Buddha appears and tells him that there is a particular girl, flower girl, who offered a single coin that she had earned, and that was all she had, her sarvasva as it was. And it was not accepted. And that is why I'm hurt by that. And that is extremely precious. I want that. It is believed that immediately the head priest rushes there, finds the girl, wakes her up, and requests her to give that coin that she had, her only earning, which she has, the earning of that particular day. It is now again added to the finding, to all the money that they've got, or all the things that they've got. And this time when the statue is made, it is believed that this coin goes and actually occupies the heart of the Buddha and keeps the entire statue together. So that is the value of something offered with devotion. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money. Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati tadham bhakti upahritam ashnami prayatatmanah yat karoshi yadashnasi yadjuhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya satkurushva madarpanam. भगवान अर्जुन को बड़े प्यार से कौंतेय कहते हैं, उनकी माँ का नाम लेके, उनके माँ का कुंती के पुत्र, इस भांति उन्हें एड्रेस करते हुए कहते हैं कि आप जो भी करो, आप जो भी खाओ, जो भी यज्ञ करो, जो भी चीज आप किसी को देते हो, कुछ भी आप प्रयास करते हो, ये सब कुछ आप उस तरह करो कि मुझे आप इसे अर्पण कर रहे हो, उस भावना के साथ करो, और उसमें क्या होगा फायदा? इट्स अ टू फोल्ड बेनिफिट, दो फायदे होंगे। एक तो आपको जो भी चुनौती है, प्रकार है, उसे आप बिल्कुल अच्छी तरह से उसमें आप जीत पाएंगे। उतना ही नहीं, पर इसका जो नतीजा हो, अक्सर हमारे पास जो हमारे ज्ञानेंद्रिय हैं, कर्मेंद्रिय हैं, the instruments that we have to gauge the situation may not be perfect. We may not have all the right information, and we may take some action at that point of time in the spur of the moment without really knowing all the implications. But if we do it with that sense of devotion, if that is always in your heart, devotion for the Lord, even if your mouth has uttered something or your hands have done something which you may feel was not something that was correct, given that your senses have their limitations, he says, Shubha Shubha Falaireva Mokshase Karma Bandhanai. Nevertheless, once you do it with me seated in your heart, whatever are the phala, the fruits of your action, he says, I'll make sure that you are liberated. You're not bound by the karma bandha. You're not bounded by the bondage of those actions. There's a similar story also in Valmiki Ramayana, the beginning of it itself. Valmiki, a great sage, when he goes to the bank of Tamasa Nadi early in the morning for his bath, he's in a great state of meditative silence, and he's enjoying that whole place. But as he goes there, he sees two beautiful birds, crouch birds, actually playing with full mirth, enjoying. And all of a sudden, there's a hunter which shoots one of the birds, and there's a huge amount of screeching because one bird dies and the other one is lamenting the death of its mate. He's absolutely annoyed, and at the spur of the moment, from his mouth, he curses that hunter and says that you'll not live long. And the words come to his mouth. But when he goes back to his hermitage and feels very bad that, well, I'm a very evolved person, someone in a deep state of meditation. Why did I get carried away by that momentary anger? Why did I curse him? And so saying, when he's worried about this and thinking about it, look at the benevolence of the Lord, look at the grace, the kindness of the Lord, the absolute magnanimity of the Lord. Brahma comes and says that those words, if they are written, the same words, they happen to be the starting lines of the entire epic Ramayana, which has come down to us over all these ages. So even an act committed by us, sometimes out of anger, out of a momentary knee-jerk reaction, with limited vision, even if our eyes are not fully open and not able to see the situation in totality. And even if we say it, provided we have the Lord deeply seated in us and believe fully in his mercy and in him, then even those actions get beautifully mutated, converted, so that we are not bound by the fruits of those actions. Now, as we come towards the end of this chapter, he also says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshosti na priyaha. I'm equally disposed towards everybody. I have no hatred towards anyone, nor am I too attached to anyone. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maim te teshu chapyaham. They're all in me, I am in them, and I come to life in them. And he says, those who pray, I am for them. But I have no preferences. As long as people My devotees love me, they care for me, I am for them. Api chetsu duracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadureva samantavya samyat vyavasito hisa. So he says, even a bad person, by these definitions, worldly definitions of good and bad, if he really prays one-mindedly or pointedly to me, becomes a good man. So it's about these definitions. It may be, as we just said, even if the words that came out were meant to be curses or bad, they get magically transformed. The same words, the same syllables, the same letters, but they lend themselves to something very different, something very shubha, very beautiful, very pious. Similarly, even a person who may be full of evil originally, but if he is now devotedly praying to the Lord, even his actions eventually make him a good man, and he moves towards the Lord. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. So he says, a devotee of mine, Kshipram, immediately, one who is my devotee, he will attain eternal peace. And he says, know that my true devotee will never come to harm. Na pranashyati. I will never let him down. There's so many stories. We've heard Hari tumharo, Janaki Peer, Draupadi ki laaj rakhi tum badhayo cheer. So there are so many such stories, and even in our own life, I can quote many such instances in my own life. And I think in the next session, I would elaborate on some of them as well, where the situations have seemed so very difficult. Of course, there's a saying in Hindi and in Gujarati, ke prarabdh pan purusharth ni toch parat hai. You have to put in your efforts. You cannot say that, well, I'll put in no efforts and I'll let my prarabdh take over. आपने आपको कर्तव्य करवाना है, हमारे सामने हमारा जो फर्ज है वो तो हमें करना ही है, लेकिन अगर हम उसे भगवान को एक अर्पण करते हुए एक अच्छी भावना के साथ अगर करते हैं, तो उसका जो नतीजा है, उसका जो रिजल्ट है, बहुत ही अच्छा होता है और प्रारब्ध भी अच्छी ही बनती है. तो इसमें अब आगे जाते हुए, माम ही पार्थ व्यपाश्रित्य येपि स्यु पाप योनय स्त्रियो वैश्यास तथा शूद्रास तेपि यान्ति पराम गतिम किम पुनः ब्राह्मणा पुण्या भक्ता राजश्रयस्तथा अनित्यम सुखम लोकम imam prapya bhajasva mam. So in this again, the Lord is going further to say, this is a very, very beautiful statement to say, that he does not believe in any categorization, classes. There is no gender difference. It's not that men can reach him, women cannot, that people of a particular caste, class, a particular station in society can reach. He's absolutely attainable for everybody. So we do talk sometimes of the ovarian lottery and say that if you were born in a certain family, in a certain context, you have things going better for you. But that's not the case. He says, I am equally accessible for anybody, for everybody. So I think this is again a very, very strong and a very powerful guarantee. And finally, the last shloka of this chapter, which is again beautiful, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktvaiva atmanam matparayanaha. So again, he says, place your mind in me, fill yourself with me, or place your mind fully in me, become my devotee. Do yajna, any work that you do it for me. It's like Sri Ramakrishna says. There's also a famous similar story of Shivaji Maharaj. It is believed that once he goes up to his guru and says that, well, I find this whole thing very difficult to handle. He says, well, do one thing, you give your whole kingdom to me, but just rule it as my appointee, as someone who has been appointed by me. In a similar manner, I think the Lord tells us that don't carry all this burden on your shoulder. It's not as if it is your headache. It's all the Lord's work. But you are just being handed the responsibility. You've just been made his servant to do his work. And as Meera says, Chakar Rakhoji. So all we have to do is remember that we are a servant of the divine. And in that spirit, do whatever we can with complete devotion, with complete sincerity to the divine. And he says, if you do that, Mame Vaishyasi Yuktvaiva, you will attain me with faith in me, and only you will only attain me. It's a kind of guarantee again. So again, this man mana, and not a manmani, not to be here and there, but to always have a mind fully anchored in the Lord. I think this is the key of this chapter. Om Tat Satiti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yogo Nama Navamodhyaya Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. We stop with a break here.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now we will take a short break of 10 minutes. See you all sharp at, now it is 6:55. We will come at 7:05.
So we start the second session,
Yes, ma'am.
and I also thought we can probably have a longer Q&A, and I'll probably take about half an hour for this, and then leave it open for questions if there are any. इसमें मैं कोशिश करूंगी कि थोड़ा और हिंदी भी इसमें हम यूज करें. मुझे कहा गया है कि हिंदी और इंग्लिश दोनों को आप यूज करिए. तो जैसे अभी पहले सेशन में हमने एक एक श्लोक पूरा ही चैप्टर 9 जो है गीता का, इसकी हमने एक पूरी हमने प्रवचन किया है. और उसमें अगर फिर से इसका एक ओवरऑल ढांचा देखें तो शुरुआत में पहले 2-3 श्लोक में जो है भगवान इसका चैलेंजिंग द चैलेंजेस के लिए सीक्रेट क्या है, कैसे इसमें सफलता कैसे मिल सकता है हमें, उसके लिए भगवान ने कहा है कि क्या रास्ता है, कैसे करना चाहिए, और कैसे हम अगर अपने ड्यूटी, अपनी जो फर्ज है जीवन में जिस भी मुकाम पर हो, हम उसको अगर अच्छी तरह से श्रद्धा के साथ अगर हम करते हैं तो हम उसमें सफलता ही प्राप्त नहीं करते हैं, पर साथ ही साथ हमें सुखम बहुत सुख भी मिलता है जो बिल्कुल अव्यय है, जो मिटता नहीं है. और इसके बाद तो इसको देखते हुए श्रद्धा की जो बात आती है तो देयर इज वन स्टोरी, एक कहानी मैं आपसे कहना चाहूंगी जो मुझे बहुत इसने प्रभावित किया है. एक आपने फरीदकोट शहर का नाम सुना होगा, ये पंजाब में है, और ये एक बाबा फरीद नाम के एक सूफी संत, उनके ऊपर ये शहर का नाम फरीदकोट बना है. और ये कहानी जो है एक छोटे लड़के की है. ये लड़का एक बहुत ही जिसे कहते हैं एक रॉयल फैमिली, एक शाही घर में इसका जन्म हुआ था. और जैसे अक्सर शाही कुटुंब में जब किसी बच्चे का जन्म होता है तो फिर वहाँ बहुत सारा उसे पैसा और सब बहुत आसानी से मिलता है, और इस वजह से उसको अच्छे राह पर रहना जरा मुश्किल हो जाता है. तो इस छोटे लड़के की माँ जो थी वो चाहती थी कि उसका बेटा नालायक न बन जाए और किसी गलत रास्ते पर न जाए. तो उसने अपने बेटे से उसने कहा कि तुम्हें रोज, जब बिल्कुल छोटा था तो उसे एक लालच दिया उसने कि अगर हम रोज तुम इबादत करोगे यानी उपासना प्रार्थना, तो फिर तुम्हें एक शक्कर भगवान या ईश्वर अल्लाह तुम्हें देंगे. और इस बात को मानते हुए वो जो बच्चा था रोज प्रार्थना करता था, इबादत करता था. और जब वो आंख बंद करके अपनी इबादत करे, उसकी माँ चुपके से एक छोटी सी शक्कर का जो एक टुकड़ा था वहां रख देती थी, और जब वो इबादत करके आंख खोलता था तो उसे वो शक्कर मिल जाता था। तो ये सिलसिला जारी रहा कई महीनों तक, कई सालों तक। अब ये जवान लड़का था, और उस दिन जब वो इबादत करने बैठा तो कोई संजोग और परिस्थिति ऐसी थी कि उसकी माँ उस दिन वहां शक्कर न रख पाई, और माँ थी वहां, और उन्हें भी अंदर से बहुत ही डर भी लग रहा था, और बिल्कुल वो भगवान से, अल्लाह से प्रार्थना कर रही थी कि कुछ भी करो, लेकिन अगर ऐसा न हो कि मेरे बच्चे का तुम पर जो आस्था है, श्रद्धा है, वो टूट जाए, तो जरा कुछ तो करो कि उसकी श्रद्धा टूटे नहीं। और ऐसे करके वो भी बिल्कुल fervently she prays to the divine, बिल्कुल प्रार्थना करती है कि आज ऐसा न हो कि उसकी जो तुम्हारे पर श्रद्धा है वो टूट जाए। उसके बाद प्रार्थना करके जब वो उठता है तो उस दिन शक्कर तो नहीं होता है, पर वो खड़े होके अपनी माँ की तरफ, बड़े उसके आंख में एक तरह का नूर है, आता है। उसकी माँ थोड़ी घबराती है कि शायद ये मुझे आज पूछेगा कि अभी तक तुमने मुझसे एक गलत झूठ भी कहा और गलत किस्म से ये भगवान या अल्लाह शक्कर देते हैं ये बात की। लेकिन जब वो जाता है, माँ को देख के कहता है, शक्कर खंड निवात गुड़ माख्यो माजा दूध सभ्य वस्तु मिठिया रब ने पूजन तुद। मतलब क्या कि ये सब शक्कर खंड निवात गुड़ ये सब मीठे हैं, लेकिन आज जो मैंने एक मिठास अनुभव की, आज जो मैंने एक नूर का महसूस जो मैंने किया, वो इस सब से कहीं ज्यादा मीठा था, कहीं ज्यादा शक्कर से सुंदर था। तो उससे जो है वो बेटा उसका था, वो फरीद था, छोटा लड़का था फरीद, बड़ा होके फिर बहुत ही बड़ा एक सूफी संत हो गया, और आज उसके नाम पर वहां है। और जो गुरु ग्रंथ साहब है उसमें भी इनके काफी सारे ऐसे इनके शब्द उसमें गाए जाते हैं, उसमें से ये वाला भी एक है। तो कहने का मतलब है कि ये जो डिवोशन है, श्रद्धा है, अगर हमें लगे कि कोई कारण से अगर गलती भी हो जाए, जैसे झूठ भी उसकी माँ ने कहा था, लेकिन उसमें भी ईश्वर की हमेशा एक वो परम कृपालु है, तो भगवान हमेशा कुछ ऐसा नहीं करते हैं कि श्रद्धा टूट जाए। तो इस वजह से ये एक बहुत अच्छा मुझे एग्जाम्पल हमेशा मुझे लगता है कि दिस इज समथिंग दैट इज वेरी ब्यूटीफुल। Question and answer, we'll take it at the end of it.
Yes, ma'am, we will take it at the end.
We'll
All
take
of
it
us
at the
to
end
answer.
of it, yeah. Now, similarly, if we go further, he establishes his presence in everything. And I think here again, the Lord says that I am there in everything. The laws of Prakriti, nature, creation. He says I am unaffected by it. I'm responsible for all this. It's all happening under my watchful eyes. So in that sense, he says that he is the doer of everything. He with a capital H, well, you can say that it's a she as well, because the Lord again has no gender. Ultimately, the divine includes everything. So he says, I am responsible for everything. So please don't believe that you are the doer. But I would like to share that there have been many moments in my career too. For example, if I talk of a very recent development, when I was working in the health department, I joined the health department of Gujarat in the year 2017 as Commissioner of Health and Principal Secretary of Public Health and Family Welfare. At that time, when we had the SDG ranking, the Sustainable Development Goal 3, which is good health and well-being, the ranking by Niti Aayog and the United Nations, Gujarat had the 17th rank at that time. So what we did is we sat down with the team and put in our efforts collectively by consulting everybody, right from the last mile worker called Asha, because there's nothing like a hierarchy here. I think it's all a team. And it's believed that the strength of a chain is the strength of its weakest link. And you cannot not have the confidence and ideas of people implementing it at different levels. So we had several rounds of discussions and brought down all those points which we felt had to be attended to. And we came up with about 11 programs, plans, or areas that needed to be implemented. We called it 7-11, 7 and 4, 7 related to reproductive child health and 4 related to others. And then week on week, in fact, I also started having a small dashboard with the use of digital technology, where right on my hand set, I would be able to know how many children died on that particular day, because we were monitoring infant mortality. How many mothers died that particular day? Who were they? Which city did they come from? Which was the primary health center that was attending to them? Which health worker, their name, their number. So when we started drilling down this kind of information, which became available to us on a radar, and following it up meticulously, collectively, the entire team, we found that the results that were emerging really improved. The second year, 2018-19, when the NITI did its ranking again, our ranking had improved from 17th to the 8th position. And again, doing some more tweaking, some more learnings that we had got in the course of the last several months when we progressed further and started monitoring. We also did very interesting things like midwife-led care units. We started having maternity picnics for the Ashas. They were taken to the secondary and tertiary care centers. When all this was done, we felt that the next time, which the results just came out in the beginning of last year, in 2021, Gujarat got the first rank in the SDG Goal 3. And this, I think, while efforts were put in by all, and the credit goes to the entire team, but I must say that in this entire process, when we did it with that sense of faith, we cannot take credit and say that I did it, because I think it's a teamwork, and definitely it is in our hands to put in the efforts. But ultimately, if something has to work, you see, there can be millions of reasons, even amount, if something, there's so many things that can prevent it from happening. So in spite of all the efforts, if it really finally has to reach its end goal, I think it certainly also needs the grace, divine, supreme grace of the divine Lord. And I think we were fortunate that we did put in our best. As I said, efforts and purusharths are absolutely imperative. We cannot be fatalistic and say that, look, we're not going to put in any efforts. Whatever has to happen will happen. No, we have to put in our efforts. But having done that, there is still something which is far beyond us. And these are little miracles that do happen. And there's a sweet tipping point. After putting in your best efforts, you may have gone 20 steps, 30 steps, 40 steps, but suddenly something takes it all the way from 40 to 100, which even you may not have expected. So that way, when you do this with that complete faith in the divine, of course, completely supported by action on the ground, you do get extraordinary results. And this has been my experience time and again. Again, if we go to the other shloka in this chapter, where he talks of the 14th shloka, he says, with this firm resolve, and in fact, always worship me, unwavering. And I think it is the small daily task. I believe that in all these efforts, there is a saying that as a child, I learned from my grandfather, and which is very important. A small daily task, if it be done really daily, will beat the labors of a spasmodic Hercules. What it means is that not only should you have, a goal, a kind of faith in your goal and in the divine and work towards it, but consistency is also key. It's not about, putting in a lot of efforts, spasmodic, in a spasm, knee-jerk, and then after that stopping and not doing anything. I think that consistency and constant progress is very important. And that is where this shloka, the 14th shloka of this chapter, which again tells us the same thing. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dradhavrata namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. So it is satatam, satat, hamesha, all the time, consistently. So he says, with devotion, when you do that, when you perform your actions, it really makes sure that you get results. Now, when we go beyond to say that the path of knowledge also, even that brings you to me. Jnana yajnena chapyane. There's a very beautiful story of Sri Krishna. There's a very, very sort of, shall I say, renowned devotee of Krishna called Narad or Narada, who once sat with Krishna, Sri Krishna, and asked him, what's the ultimate secret of life? Can you tell me that? After all, I'm your ardent devotee, I believe in you, Krishna. But what is the ultimate secret of life? Mischievous Krishna is always up to something, isn't he? So he was standing there and just quietly disappeared. Now, the place that Narad was, this was a little town, and it was evening time. So as he walked along in search of Krishna, he wondered, where has Krishna disappeared? He saw all these cows coming back. It's called the Godhuli time, isn't it? When the cows come back with the cow herd. And when he looked into the eyes of the cows, somehow he found something sparkling there, something shining there that reminded him of his Lord. He looked at the cow herd, the smile on his face and the sparkle in his eyes reminded him of the Lord. He then went, it was evening time, he became hungry, he knocked at a door, and there was a mother who came there carrying her little child. And when he looked at the baby's eyes, he felt it was Sri Krishna calling out to him, and it almost rang a bell in him. The mother, when he saw her and the love that she had for the baby in her eyes, again he saw something very familiar. It seemed that he was seeing someone very familiar there. When he requested for food, they invited him in, and the entire family, it had the grandparents, little boy, and the husband, everybody there, they all sat together and partook of the food. And before that, they said their prayers. And in all of this, when he looked into the eyes of all the people there, he could see something in the eyes. He saw the young boy there wink at him. And all of this, it's as if something was ringing a bell. He didn't quite yet understand. But when he came back and finally saw Krishna again, Krishna winked at him and said, wasn't I there in everything? So the Lord is indeed there in everything and everyone around us. And I think that is the realization when we stop looking at us as being different from the others and actually believe that we are one, then there is no set of differentiation. There's nothing like us and them, me and you. We're all one. And that is the ultimate. So we all actually are nothing but each one of us is a spark of the divine. It's just that we've taken different forms. It's like if there is gold, there could be different ornaments made of gold. There could be some earrings or a bangle or whatever. But ultimately the matter, the metal that is there in each one of them is gold. Similarly, all of us, we have no reason to feel that I'm superior or inferior or that he's different, I'm different. We're all little sparks of the divine. Some may be flying a little here, flying here, but we are all intrinsically one. So I think that's what the Lord wants us to understand, that he is there in each one of us. And if we look at each one of us with those eyes, with that devotion in the Lord, seeking the Lord, we will find him in each one of us. And magically, a lot of times, situations that may have seemed very difficult. You may have had a meeting where you may have felt that nothing is going to work today. Things are so difficult. But when you go with this openness and complete surrender to the divine, you place all the issues at his feet and say that, well, you have to help solve this. Of course, having done your work, you'll find that on that day, when you really go there with an open mind, a lot of things get absolutely, they get cleared and sorted out almost like a breeze. And this is something that can only be experienced. And I'm sure if you follow this and try it, I can guarantee that you will also have such experiences. He then goes on not only to say that he's there in every work, but he's there in every relationship. That's what he says, isn't it? I'm the father, mother, grandfather, and the entire support and so on. And then also about the perfunctory nature of it. After which, now we come to the key part of this, some of the key portions here. The master key, isn't it? He said, Ananya Chintayantoma Yejana Parvipasate. So this, again, all it's very important, because when we pray to the Lord, then, and without any worry about our welfare too, I have an experience to share here. Way back in 1994, I was the assistant collector in Jamnagar. And at that time, हिंदी में मैं कहूँगी ये, क्योंकि बीच बीच में थोड़ा सा हिंदी भी यूज करते हैं. मैं वहाँ असिस्टेंट कलेक्टर थी, जिससे मददनीश कलेक्टर कहते हैं गुजराती में. और वहाँ उन दिनों मुझे एक टेलीग्राम मिला दिल्ली से कि जो समुद्र में लांग्रेल जो जहाज होते हैं, यानी कि ships which are anchored in the high seas, उसमें बंधुआ मजूर को रखा गया है और उनको हमें मुक्त करना है. ये माहिती मिलते ही, ये जब जानकारी मुझे मिली, तो मेरी टीम, इसमें मेरे एक रिश्तेदार थे मेहता भाई करके, और एक और मेरे नायब मामलतदार थे शाह भाई करके, दोनों काफी बड़ी उम्र के थे, तब 55-56 वर्ष के तो जरूर थे. और उनको लेके हम लोग निकल गए. और पहले कुछ आइडिया नहीं था हमें कि कहाँ जाना है, कैसे जाना है. और वहाँ वो एक टाइडल शोर है, यानी कि उसमें वो भराव आता है ना पानी का. तो हम दोपहर को पहुंच गए और 13 जितने जहाज में, और बिल्कुल ये समुद्र के मध्य समुद्र में लांगरे हुए थे. तो वहाँ एक एक जहाज को चढ़ने में बिल्कुल वो एक रस्सी का जो लैडर होता है उसे यूज करके हमें चढ़ना पड़ा. और चढ़ के काफी डेंजरस भी था. इस तरह से हमने 550 जितने बंधुआ मजूरों को उन जहाजों में से मुक्त किया. तो कहने का मतलब है कि जब हम अपनी भी किसी अपनी हमें क्या इसमें कुछ हानि पहुंचेगी, कुछ प्रॉब्लम होगा, ये सब का फिक्र न करते हुए जब हम अपना काम कर्तव्य करते हैं, लेकिन भगवान में पूरा, उन पर पूरी आस्था के साथ, श्रद्धा के साथ जब अपना कर्तव्य करते हैं, तो रिजल्ट्स भी अच्छे मिलते ही हैं. तो ये पूरी जो एक्सरसाइज हुई, उसका एक सुखद परिणाम ये हुआ कि इस तरह से जो बंधुआ मजूर अलग अलग तमिलनाडु से, अलग अलग राज्यों से, उत्तर प्रदेश से, बंगाल से, राजस्थान से उन जहाजों में थे, उन सबको अपने अपने घर, उनकी जितनी भी उन्हें पैसा राशि मिलना था, दे के वापस भेजा गया. और बाद में इसकी एक संस्थाकीयकरण करके इनका एक रजिस्ट्रेशन वगैरह करने की भी एक सिस्टम बाद में की गई थी. तो अनन्या चिंतयन्तोमा योगक्षेमम वहाम्यहम, ये जो आता है ये श्लोक, ये भी हमारे लिए बहुत मायने रखता है। इसी तरह से हम देखें तो भगवान कुछ भी हम करें लेकिन भक्ति के साथ, डिवोशन के साथ करते हैं तो उसका महत्व बहुत ज्यादा, कहीं ज्यादा है। ये अक्सर मैं एक दाखला या उदाहरण देती हूँ कि अगर एक 100 रुपए का नोट हो तो शायद इतना ही बड़ा होगा ना कागज, या अगर इस कागज और उस कागज को जलाया जाए तो उसमें जितनी उष्णता या जो कैलोरीफिक वैल्यू निकलेगी वो तो उतनी ही होगी, लेकिन इस कोरे कागज के मुकाबले जिसमें नोट है और जिसमें 100 रुपए का नोट है उसमें मुद्रण किया हुआ है, इसीलिए उसकी पूरी कीमत कहीं ज्यादा है ना। उसी तरह से काम वही हो लेकिन अगर उसके ऊपर एक भक्ति का एक मुद्रण अगर लग जाता है तो उसकी कीमत, उसकी जो वजूद है बहुत बहुत बढ़ जाती है। तो इसी तरह से अक्सर हमें लगेगा कि मैंने तो कुछ खास किया नहीं था पर इतने अच्छे रिजल्ट्स कैसे आ गए। तो मेहनत है, परिश्रम है, पर सिर्फ एक शुष्क परिश्रम, और परिश्रम में अगर भक्ति का भी रस उसमें है तो फिर उसका नतीजा बहुत अच्छा हो सकता है। और लास्ट नाउ I think as we come to the end, I will also talk about अभी एक चुनौती जिसमें मैं अभी फिलहाल, अब क्योंकि इसका टाइटल ही है चैलेंजिंग द चैलेंजेस, तो अभी एक चैलेंज मेरे कार्यक्षेत्र में अभी जो हो रहा है वो एक ऑरोविल नाम की एक संस्था है जहां मैं अभी सेक्रेटरी के तौर पर मेरा फर्ज अदा कर रही हूँ। मैं चाहूंगी क्योंकि इसमें एक बहुत ही सुंदर, बिल्कुल जो देश में विदेश में इस दुनिया में कहीं भी कल्पना न कर सकें ऐसा एक सुंदर एक शहर बनाने का श्री अरविंद और उनकी जो स्पिरिचुअल कोलैबोरेटर थी मदर, उनकी एक परिकल्पना थी, उनका एक सपना था और उन्होंने इसकी बहुत बारीकाई से प्लानिंग भी की थी। एक उस जमाने के 1968 के वर्ष के आसपास की बात है, तब जो विश्व के एक बहुत ही प्रख्यात आर्किटेक्ट, टाउन प्लानर थे रोजे ऑजे, उनके साथ 3 साल काम करके उन्होंने पूरी इसकी बारीकाई के साथ प्लानिंग की कि शहर कैसे रहेगा, कहाँ पर और किस तरह से सेंटर में इसका सोल यानी इसकी आत्मा कहाँ रहेगी, इसकी करोड़रज्जु क्या होगी, बाहर कैसे लोग कहाँ रहेंगे, और इसको पूरा एक गैलेक्सी यानी कि एक पूरा जो हमारा अंतरिक्ष में जो गैलेक्सी है उसकी एक आकार देके उन्होंने इसकी एक परिकल्पना की थी। अब उसको हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि उस शहर, अभी 53 वर्ष हो चुके हैं इस शहर का फाउंडेशन स्टोन जो हुआ था, फाउंडेशन सेरेमनी हुआ था 1968 में फरवरी, इसी महीने में, जो अभी कल अभी जो आने वाला महीना है फरवरी, तो उस महीने में इसकी फाउंडेशन स्टोन रखवाई गई थी। अब 53 साल के बाद अब पहली बार एक पूरी टीम ऐसी वहां हमें मिली है कि जो पूरी तरह से कोशिश कर रही है कि अभी इस साल श्री अरविंद की भी 150वीं जन्म जयंती है। आप जानते हैं कि हमारे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी इसकी बहुत जोर शोर से इसकी जो पूरी सेलिब्रेशन है इसके लिए भी एक हाई लेवल कमेटी भी बनाई है और अभी 12 जनवरी को भी इसका एक उद्घाटन किया। कोविड होने की वजह से वर्चुअल मोड से किया गया था। तो अब इसके आगे चलते हुए हम चाहते हैं कि इस सिटी को मैनिफेस्ट करने के लिए we need a large number of volunteers, and I thought I'll also appeal to all the young students there of the Kandivali Education Society. We would like to invite you, some of the faculty members. We need people committed to see something as beautiful and exquisite as this. It's a city of goodwill for the whole of humanity. We have people from 60 countries staying there today. And there is a great deal of effort because over the years, somehow the dream had to be manifested, but there have been certain obstructions. As you know, it is normal in the course of any such big task. There would be certain resistances, certain obstructions to manifestation of the divine will. And that has been happening, but now collectively we are determined to make sure the city manifests in the way it was meant to be, as it was conceived by the mother. And we would like a large number of volunteers from all over India, particularly from your institution, to come there and join hands in actually making this happen. So on this note, I think I will stop here. And once again, I hope that this chapter of Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga, which is very simple, it's a royal secret, royal education, but yet it is such a simple thing. The key is so simple. All it entails is having that complete sense of devotion, always be anchored to the divine. If we follow that with a very soft, clear mind, I think you can attain whatever you want to. And the most important of all, the lotus feet of the divine. I once again thank all of you. And now we'll have question answers if there are any.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for such a lovely session. Now I request students, participants, if you have queries, you can unmute yourself and raise the question. But ensure that one question at a time by a person.
Ganga, I would like to say thank you so much, madam, for the wonderful discourse which you have given, giving life examples relating to your own experiences. And definitely we would like to visit with students your Auroville ashram, the city. It is well known, and definitely we would like to visit. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Students, if you have questions, we can go for the question answer session.
Ma'am, I have got certain questions with me, so I would put in the questions to you. So there's one question by one of our students. He asks, what is the difference between desire-oriented devotee and desire-less devotee? What is the difference between these two people? Desire-oriented devotee and desire-less devotee.
So the desire-oriented devotee and desire-less devotee, I'm not exactly sure in which context they're asking, but I presume it is in the context that I understand. It's the following. It's not for anything in life that you have to attain. It is important to have goals, and therefore it's important to have those desires to reach the goal. So having those desires is absolutely fine. But while we do that, to realize that we are a devotee who is grounded in the divine and doing whatever we have to do with faith in the divine, and even the desire on attaining it, that is also offered. Even if you eat, that's why he says that whatever you eat, whatever you give, whatever you do all that for me, Madhyaji. Even the yagna, whatever you do, everything is for me. So when you do man mana, we do everything with him in us, then this desire oriented devotee is absolutely fine. So in fact, Gita is not something which asks you to give up desires. You see, it's for a warrior on a battlefield. And in fact, Arjuna he had given up his desire to fight a war. He wanted to run away. But if you notice, Krishna is egging him to have the desire to fight. So it is not that we want desire-less people. That's not what Gita is propounding, but it says, yes, you do whatever you have to. It's okay, perfectly fine to have desires, but do it with that sense of complete devotion in the divine. I hope that answers it.
Yes, ma'am. Another question is, राजव्यूह का सही अर्थ क्या है? राजव्यूह का सही अर्थ क्या है?
Can you repeat it? Raj Yoga or what is it?
राजव्यूह का सही अर्थ क्या है? The child has written. If the child is here, can you please unmute yourself and ask? We move ahead with the other question, and I will just get back to the student. What is the easiest means of obtaining liberation? What is the easiest means of obtaining liberation? This is another question.
So this, I would say, there's a very famous Upanishad, Kali Santarana Upanishad, which says that the easiest way of attaining liberation, especially for people like us in the current epoch, is taking the name of the Lord, isn't it? So to constantly have the name of the divine go on in your mind as a background, just as we listen to background music as we do our work. Some of us like to hear white noise, brown noise as we do work. Similarly, if in our mind we constantly have the name of the Lord going on and on, I think that is the easiest way. In fact, Nam Sankirana or Nam Sankirtana, they say, is the best way to really attain the divine. There's a very famous bhajan of Kabir. I'll try and see if I can sing it. Govinda Hari Hari Gopala Hari Hari Radha Ramana Hari 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 Bolo Bhai Hari na bolega to Ram Duhai काहे को पढ़ता किन किन किताब हरि नाम लेने से सब कुछ होता तेरा मेरा कह कर क्या कर पाया हरि के भजन बिन झूठ गवाया कहत कबीरा सुनो भय साधु कहत कबीर सुनो भय साधु हरि गुण गावत वैकुंठ जावत गोविंद हरि हरि गोपाल हरि हरि राधा रमण हरि हरि हरि. I also want to share the screen after we finish this, a song of Dhruv Bhai Bhatt that I've sung. I thought I'd share that with you, but after the questions are over.
Maitri Soni, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes.
Hi, Maitri.
First of all, hi, and it was a very great lecture and session. What I want to ask is, I have two questions. Can I ask both?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so first is होली पवित्र चीजें होती है उसके और हमारे पीरियड्स के बीच में जो सबने रूल्स बनाए हैं, क्या वो सब सही है, सच है? और क्या हम ड्यूरिंग पीरियड्स कैन वी टच और रीड दी भगवद गीता? दिस इज माय फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन.
So I would personally say that, you see, definitely pavitrata has nothing to do with the biological state. I would say that if you can definitely read the Bhagavad Gita even when you have the periods, because it is the very chanting of the name of the divine that is the best cleansing that you can have. And the fact that the periods are just a physiological part of your growing, of the process of your body. It has nothing to do with, there's nothing impure about it, is what I would say. Next
Yes,
question.
thank you. And my next question is, जब द्रौपदी का चीरहरण हुआ था तब महाभारत में ऐसा कृष्ण ने बताया था कि जब जब किसी स्त्री का मतलब अपमान होता है, शोषण होता है, तो किसी ना किसी रूप में युद्ध का जन्म होता है, महाभारत होती है। तो अभी इतने सारे जो रेप्स हो रहे हैं, इतना सारा एक्सट्रीम लेवल पर हो रहा है सब, तो क्या अभी भी कृष्ण किसी ना किसी रूप में मतलब हेल्पफुल होते हैं?
बिल्कुल, आई थिंक बिल्कुल हैं। ऑफ कोर्स दिस इज आल्सो टू से दैट ये इसका मतलब ये भी नहीं है कि हमें केयर नहीं लेना है, एंड जो भी प्रोटेक्शन है, जो भी लीगल प्रोविजंस है, सब करने ही है। और क्योंकि हर स्टेज में कुछ ना कुछ, नॉट ओनली रेप, नॉट ओनली क्राइम्स अगेंस्ट वुमेन, क्राइम्स अगेंस्ट चिल्ड्रन अक्रॉस कंट्रीज, हर चीज जो होती है, ऑल दैट इज लाइफ इटसेल्फ इज अ बैटलफील्ड। ये सब चैलेंजेस हैं, बट द पॉइंट इज ईच वन ऑफ अस, हम लोग, to what extent can I protect myself and protect everybody around me? तो उस श्रद्धा के साथ if we all join hands and do, first of all, तो ये रेप करने वाले भी, the perpetrator of violence also will not do that, isn't it? So if the idea is to have more and more education, अगर सबको educate किया जाए on the right virtues, the right values of life, अगर बचपन से ही बच्चों को ये सब सही मूल्यों का अगर सीख दिया जाए, तो they will not grow up with these violent feelings, with this feeling of hatred towards others. लगेगा ही नहीं है कि कोई और है, सब में अपना ही अंश दिखाई देगा, तो फिर ये chances of people committing crime also becomes less. So it is definitely with this shiksha, lok shiksha and jan jagran, we can bring it, but that is not to say that कायदा की जरूरत नहीं है। बिल्कुल, अगर ये होते हुए भी, जैसे महाभारत में भी, क्योंकि जब somebody who is creating violence and creating problems of law and order, we have to fight against it, वो भी तो है। और इसीलिए तो कृष्ण भगवान खुद अर्जुन से कहते हैं कि लड़ो पार्थ, अपना गांडीव संभालो और लड़ो। तो that is also important, we have to do both.
Okay ma'am, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kushi Soni, you can ask the question. Kushi Soni. Okay, ma'am, the question which was asked earlier, that is Raj गुह्य योग का सही अर्थ क्या है?
Raj Guhya Yoga. Raj means it's a royal, Guhya is secret. So it's to say that in Vidya, this is not that it is only for people belonging to royalty. वो नहीं है, अगर वैसा होता तो end of the chapter he says I'm available for everybody. So Gita again doesn't believe in all this. It is not as if it's only for a certain caste, certain class, certain gender. महिलाओं के लिए है, नहीं है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. It is for everybody. But Rajaguhya Yoga means that within secrets also, this has a certain hierarchy. This is the highest secret. In Vidya as well, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya. Guhya is something which is secretive. So it's an ultimate secret, an ultimate secret, an ultimate knowledge, which is so special. And yet we just saw that it is quite accessible, quite simple for all of us.
There's another question. What would you throw light on this statement as an earthy manifestation of the manifested God? An earthy manifestation of the manifested God. What would you?
I think this is exactly what we described, isn't it? When you look into the eyes of, if you're sitting at home, you look into the eyes of your mother, what do you see? An earthy manifestation of the God, of the divine. If you look into the eyes, when you see any person around you, if we are able to look, ultimately it's the same spark, it's the same divine manifested in different forms, right? And it may take some training on our part also to be able to cultivate, they say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So if we are able to cultivate that vision of being able to see divinity everywhere, then we reach that stage of Narada that we just described today.
If you have any other questions, you can very well unmute yourself and ask. There's a question in the chat box which we will take.
If Lord
If
doesn't believe in Varga, why shouldn't so this is again, the very definition of the word Brahmin, according to me, Dvija, it is not just by birth, it's by your actions that one actually, so it is, this again is within the reach of everybody, is what I would say. And I think each one of us, no matter what we are, at least the Gita very clearly says that each one of us, it's our prerogative to attain this Rajaguhya and Rajavidya and the ultimate unison with the divine. So some of these practices came in across the later ages, but intrinsically, I think the divine is absolutely accessible for all and equally accessible for people of all gender, all class, all caste. There is no such differentiation at all. There is nothing like us and the other. We're all one. And now, may I share the screen now?
yes, ma'am.
How do I?
There's a screen share green button. Yes.
Yes. Are you able to see it?
Yes, ma'am. We can see that.
Are you able to hear it too?
Ma'am, you have to share the sound.
How do I do that?
In the same place over there, you can click on share sound.
We are able to hear.
You're able to hear?
Yeah. Of course, the audio is a little weak.
Somebody to make the audio share. You know how to make audio.
પાકોને પીછાથી ગણવી કેમ કરીને જુદી પાકોને પીછાથી ગણવી કેમ કરીને જુદી હુંથી તું અળગો છું એવી વાત કહીથી સૂજી હુંથી તું અળગો છું એવી વાત કહીથી સૂજી કોને જોડું હાથ ચરણમાં કોના જઈને પડીએ 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 હરિ તને શું સ્મરીએ આપણ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ હરિ તને શું સ્મરીએ આપણ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ હરિ તને શું સ્મરીએ આપણ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ હરિ તને શું સ્મરીએ આપણ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ હરિ તને શું સ્મરીએ આપણ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ હરિ તને શું સ્મરીએ આપણ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ જળમાં જળ સમ રહીએ
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. It was a lovely song, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, allow me to give vote of thanks, ma'am. But your session was absolutely delightful. Our mind and soul is illuminated by your insights on chapter 9 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We are thankful to you, Jayanti ma'am, for guiding us on doing our work with dedication and with Samarpana Bhava, and that too with live examples of yours. We are truly blessed to have you with us today. My sincere thanks also goes to active participants and hope they have enriched themselves with the insights from today's session. See you all tomorrow. Over to you, Samrat sir.
Thank you, Jayanti ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Would love to have you at our campus, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to inviting and welcoming you all to Auroville as well. Thank
Definitely,
you.
ma'am. We are ready.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We meet tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Bye.